Imagine standing at the edge of the known world. Ahead of you lies an endless wilderness of ice, darkness, and silence. No maps, no rescue, no certainty, just a frozen ocean stretching beyond the horizon. Now imagine that 129 men sail directly into that unknown, and then they vanish. No survivors, no clear explanation, no final goodbye. For nearly 2 centuries, the fate of the Franklin expedition remained one of history's greatest mysteries, a story of ambition, survival, tragedy, and a frozen graveyard hidden beneath the Arctic ice. In 1845, the British Empire stood at the height of its power. There was only one prize left to claim: the Northwest Passage, a sea route through the Arctic that could connect the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Whoever mastered it would gain a powerful advantage in global trade and exploration. Many had tried. Many had failed. But Britain believed success was finally within reach. To lead the mission, the Royal Navy chose Sir John Franklin. Franklin was a respected explorer with years of Arctic experience. Though nearly 60 years old, he was considered a symbol of determination and leadership. 2 ships were prepared for the voyage: HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. They were among the most advanced exploration vessels of their time. Their hulls were reinforced against ice. They carried steam engines. They were stocked with enough provisions for years. On paper, it seemed like the perfect expedition. A total of 129 officers and crew members boarded the ships. Most of them had no idea they were leaving home for the last time. On May 19, 1845, the expedition departed England. Families waved goodbye. Crowds cheered. Newspapers celebrated the mission. No one suspected that they were witnessing the beginning of a disaster. The ship stopped briefly in Greenland. There, they were seen by whalers. It would be the last confirmed sighting of the Franklin expedition by Europeans. After that, nothing. Months passed, then years. No letters, no reports, no returning ships. At first, officials assumed the expedition was simply delayed by Arctic conditions, but as time passed, concern grew. Eventually, concern turned into fear, and fear turned into one of the largest search efforts in the exploration history. Expedition after expedition ventured into the Arctic searching for clues, but the Arctic revealed very little, only endless ice, freezing winds, and silence. Then, scattered pieces of a story began to emerge. Indigenous Inuit communities shared accounts of strange encounters years earlier. They described groups of exhausted white men moving south across the ice. The men appeared weak, hungry, desperate. Some were dragging heavy boats, others struggled to walk. For searchers, these accounts were both hopeful and terrifying. If these were Franklin's men, what had happened to them? In 1854, Scottish explorer John Rae returned with shocking information gathered from Inuit testimony. According to these accounts, the expedition had ended in catastrophe. The men had died from starvation and exposure, but there was something even more disturbing. Witnesses suggested that during their final desperate days, some survivors may have resorted to cannibalism. Victorian Britain was horrified. Many refused to believe it. The idea that Royal Navy sailors could do such a thing seemed impossible, yet the allegation would linger for generations, and with it came an even darker question. Just how desperate had the situation become? Years later, searchers discovered one of the most important clues in the entire mystery: a written note left in a cairn on King William Island. The document contained 2 messages. The first, written in 1847, reported that all was well. The ships were wintering in the Arctic. Everything seemed under control, but a second message had been added later, and this message changed everything. It revealed that the ships had become trapped in ice. Sir John Franklin was dead. Many others had died as well. The surviving crew had abandoned the ships and planned to march south. The date was April 1848. By then, 24 men were already gone. 105 remained alive, at least for the moment. Imagine that scene. You are stranded in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Temperatures plunge far below freezing. Food supplies are dwindling. No rescue is coming, and your only hope is to walk hundreds of miles through an Arctic wilderness. The crew set out on foot. It was a decision born of desperation, but the odds were almost impossible. Evidence later showed that many men dragged heavy sledges loaded with supplies and boats. Why carry so much weight? Perhaps they hoped to reach open water. Perhaps they believed they would need every possible resource. Whatever the reason, every extra pound made survival harder. Eventually, searchers discovered a haunting sight, a boat resting far from any shoreline. Inside were two human skeletons. The men had died where they lay, frozen in time, a silent reminder of a struggle that had ended in tragedy. As more remains were found over the decades, the picture became increasingly grim. Modern forensic studies revealed cut marks on some bones. The evidence strongly suggested that at least some crew members had indeed resorted to cannibalism during their final days. The rumors that shocked Victorian society were no longer just rumors. They were supported by science. But even then, many questions remained unanswered. What had caused the expedition to collapse so completely? Starvation was certainly a factor. So was extreme cold. Disease likely played a role. Some researchers suspected lead poisoning from poorly sealed food cans. Could toxic exposure have weakened the crew's judgment and health? The theory gained attention, but later studies suggested the answer was more complicated. No single cause explained the disaster. Instead, it was likely a deadly combination of factors: hunger, illness, exhaustion, isolation, and the unforgiving Arctic environment itself. Yet perhaps the greatest mystery remained unsolved. Where were the ships? For generations, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror seemed to have vanished without a trace. The Arctic kept it secret. Decade after decade, the mystery grew larger. Legends began to emerge. Some sailors spoke of ghost ships trapped in the ice. Stories circulated of dark silhouettes appearing through Arctic fog, abandoned vessels drifting silently across frozen seas. Most of these tales were likely nothing more than folklore, but when a mystery survives for centuries, legends naturally grow around it. Then, after nearly 170 years, the ice finally began to surrender its secrets. In 2014, a major breakthrough occurred. Researchers discovered the wreck of HMS Erebus beneath Arctic waters. The find stunned historians around the world. At last, one of the lost ships had been found. Then came an even greater surprise. In 2016, HMS Terror was discovered, and remarkably, it was preserved in extraordinary condition. The freezing waters had protected it for generations. Cabins, artifacts, entire sections of the vessel remained intact. It was like opening a door into the 19th century. Yet the discoveries created new questions. If the crew had abandoned the ships, how had the vessels ended up where they were found? Did some survivors return to them? Did a small group live longer than previously believed? Or did ice and currents slowly move the ships over time? Researchers continue to investigate these mysteries today. Every artifact recovered adds another piece to the puzzle, but the complete story remains frustratingly out of reach. Perhaps that is why the Franklin expedition continues to captivate people around the world. It is more than a story about lost ships. It is a story about human ambition, about courage in the face of overwhelming odds, about the limits of technology and the power of nature. The men who sailed aboard Erebus and Terror believed they were making history. In a way, they were, just not in the way anyone expected. They entered the Arctic searching for a passage. Instead, they became part of one of the greatest mysteries ever recorded. Even today, the winds sweep across the frozen Arctic islands where they made their final stand. The ice forms. The ice breaks. And beneath those cold waters, pieces of their story still wait to be discovered. Because some mysteries refuse to die. They linger in the darkness. They whisper through history, and they remind us that there are still places on Earth where the unknown remains stronger than certainty. The Franklin expedition set out to conquer the Arctic. Instead, the Arctic swallowed it whole.